There's a version of you that shows up to prove something. You mention the promotion before anyone asks. You steer the conversation toward the trip, the deal, the thing you built. And for a moment, it works. Heads nod. Someone says, "Wow." You feel seen. But watch what happens 10 minutes later. The room moves on, and something strange lingers in the air. Not admiration, exactly. Something closer to distance. Most people assume respect is earned by demonstration. Show your intelligence. Show your success. Show your confidence. And respect follows automatically. It seems logical. If you have something worth respecting, why hide it? But if that were true, the most impressive people in the room would also be the most respected. That's not what actually happens. Some of the most accomplished people you'll ever meet barely register in a room. And some of the least accomplished dominate every conversation without saying much at all. So the obvious explanation, impress people, gain respect, doesn't hold. Something else determines how we read each other. And it isn't what you show, it's what you don't need to show. Here's the pattern almost nobody notices about themselves. The frequency with which you try to prove something is inversely related to how secure you actually feel about it. Think about the people who never mention their achievements. It's rarely because they lack any. It's because the achievement has already been absorbed into who they are. It doesn't need external confirmation anymore. When something is fully yours, you stop announcing it, the same way nobody walks around reminding people they can read. Now think about what you feel compelled to mention. That's usually not your strongest ground. It's the place you're still slightly unsure of. The identity you're still building. The status you haven't fully claimed for yourself yet. The mention isn't a display of strength. It's a request for someone else to confirm it, because you haven't fully confirmed it internally. Other people sense this, not consciously but instinctively. When you offer proof, you're revealing that you needed to. And need has a smell. It's the difference between someone who states a fact and someone who's selling one. At the center of this is something psychologists call impression management. The constant, mostly unconscious work of shaping how others perceive us. Everyone does it to some degree. It's not pathological. It's human. But there's a threshold where impression management stops reinforcing your image and starts undermining it. That threshold is need. The moment your behavior signals, "I require your approval to feel stable," the content of what you're saying becomes secondary. People stop evaluating your accomplishment and start evaluating your composure. And composure loses the instant it looks like it's being performed for an audience. This connects to something deeper. Self-verification. We don't just want others to see us positively. We want them to see us the way we already see ourselves. When your self-image is genuinely stable, you don't need anyone's agreement to keep standing. When it's fragile, other people's reactions become load-bearing. You start outsourcing your sense of self to the room. That's the real mechanism behind trying too hard. It's not arrogance. It's dependency dressed as confidence. Picture a dinner where someone brings up their new car. Unprompted. Twice. In two different ways. Nobody asked. Nobody needed the detail. But something in them needed to say it. Needed the table to register it. To react. To close the loop that their own mind couldn't close alone. Or picture the coworker who, after a big meeting, replays their own comment for anyone who'll listen. Did you catch what I said about the numbers? They're not lying about their contribution. They're just still waiting for it to feel real. And they think your reaction is what will make it real. Now, picture the opposite. Someone mentions, almost in passing, that they turned down a job offer. No elaboración. No follow-up bragging. Somehow, that lands heavier than any story told twice. Not because the offer was bigger, because the way it was delivered told you they didn't need you to be impressed. And the absence of need is exactly what makes a room lean in. Here's where the assumption breaks. We think impressing people builds our status in their eyes. But status isn't granted by what you reveal. It's granted by what you can afford not to reveal. The visible restraint is the actual signal. The withheld information is doing more work than the shared information ever could. In other words, the thing you thought was strategy, showing your value, was actually working against the value you were trying to show. Here's the part that's harder to sit with. If you notice yourself reaching for validation in conversation, steering toward the achievement, the story, the subtle brag. That reach is information about you, not about the people around you. It's not that they're withholding respect unfairly. It's that you're handing them a question you haven't answered for yourself. Am I actually enough here? And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because confident people often assume their tendency to showcase themselves is proof of confidence. It's frequently the opposite. Genuine confidence is quiet, because it isn't checking for a reaction. Loud confidence is often insecurity that learned to perform loudly enough to be mistaken for the real thing. This isn't a moral failure. It's not something to be ashamed of. But pretending the impulse isn't there, insisting you only mention your success because it's just conversation, keeps you from noticing when you're leaking need into a room that's quietly reading it. Zoom out, and this pattern shows up everywhere humans interact. We are constantly, instinctively scanning each other for signs of internal stability. Not because we're cynical, because stability is useful information. It tells us who can be relied on under pressure, who won't need constant reassurance, who isn't going to make every interaction about being validated. This is why restraint reads as strength across nearly every culture and context. It's not aesthetic, it's functional. A person who doesn't need your approval to function is a person you can trust not to bend under yours. And trust, more than admiration, is what respect is actually built from. We spend years trying to prove we belong at the table. But belonging was never proven through declaration. It was proven through the calm of someone who no longer needed to check. So why do people respect you more when you stop trying to impress them? Because the moment you stop performing your value, you stop asking the room a question and start simply existing in the answer. Impressing people is an attempt to convince them. Not impressing them, while still being fully present, is a demonstration that you've already convinced yourself. And nothing communicates status faster than someone who clearly doesn't need it confirmed. The paradox is only a paradox on the surface. Underneath, it's simple. Proof invites doubt. Certainty doesn't ask to be believed. The people who move through a room without needing it to notice them are usually the ones it remembers.